Delaware Hayes and Columbus East are here to determine the champion of the 1975-76 In the Know tournament. From Central Ohio, these two outstanding high school teams are here to play the exciting game In the Know. In the Know is brought to you in part by Franklin University, offering a third kind of education in business or engineering technology. And by First Federal Savings. Enjoy life, save first. And by White Rug, with 4 locations in each end of town to serve you. Now, here is your host, Hunt Carlisle.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome. This is the championship game. After the game, one will be the champion, the other the runner-up. Either position, an enviable one to 38 other high school teams in this area. Let's meet the finalists. First, from Delaware Hayes High School, Joe Baker, Pam Livingston, Ellen Bowerly, Bob Feroz, with team advisors Mrs. Roberta Rollins and Mrs. Marie Nichols. That's the team from Delaware Hayes. And now, from Columbus East High School, Tony Roseborough, Stephanie Ward, Larry King, Aaron Estes, with their advisor, Mr. Timothy Ilg. That's the team from East High School. These are great teams. They've proven that they know the rules. The objective of the game is to score more points than the other team, anticipate but produce fewer wrong answers than the other team, and to win the contest at the end and become the champion. We'll be right back to start the championship game right after this message. Here it is, the finals for 1975-76. Good luck to both teams. Your first question is worth 5 points. A man born in Ohio in 1892 retired recently from his regular radio newscast after...
Hayes, Pam.
Lowell Thomas.
Yes, Lowell Thomas, as a journalist and world traveler. For 5 points, what's the name given to the total of all goods and services produced by the United...
Hayes, Bob.
Gross national product.
Gross national product is right for 5 points. Here's a 10-pointer. Along with the Callens and the Knowns, there was a third...
East Larry.
The Ides.
The Ides, that's it. In the Roman months, I have a 5-pointer. What state am I describing? The Cascade Mountains divide the eastern and
Hayes,
western...
Pam.
Washington.
Washington is right. And for 10 points, a British sea captain is told that he and one of his sailors had been exchanged as babies, and the two of them promptly trade...
Hayes, Bob.
Captain's Courageous by Kipling.
No, that's not the answer. They trade ranks. In what comic opera does this take place? East.
Stephanie.
The HMS Pinafore.
HMS Pinafore is right. Here's a 10-point question. Which of the following 4 cities is farthest south? Madrid, Rome, Athens, or Ankara?
East Aaron.
Rome.
No, that's not the answer. Hey.
Pam.
Ankara.
No, that's not the answer. It's Athens. And I have a 20-point music question. Known for his love of dance motifs blended into all of his major works, this French composer wrote until the early part of the 20th century. Listen then for 20 points. Give me his name.
Hayes, Bob.
Saint-Saëns.
Camille Saint-Saëns is the name. I have a 10-point question. Measurements are periodically redefined by the General Council of Weights and Measures. In general terms, how is a meter defined now?
Hayes, Joe.
It's the wavelength of a it's a thou.
Question goes to East. How is it defined now? Columbus East.
Larry.
It's defined by the wavelength emitted by krypton.
That's it for 10 points. I have a 10-pointer. If you referred to a current fad as epidemic, it would be widespread. What would a fad be if it were
East Larry.
It means that it would be internal, or it would be related to that, or something that would be right in its general.
That is correct. Ladies, local, internal, I have a 10-pointer. The famous statement, "There I take my stand, I can do no..."
East Larry.
Martin Luther.
Martin Luther, that's right. Spoken at the Diet of Arms in 1521 for 15 points. Name the...
East Larry.
Okay, the Diet of Worms condemned him. The Edict of Worms is the document that did it. The Diet of Worms was the committee. The The papal bull was Exsurge Domini. It was given by Leo X.
Not responsive. Name the only Roman emperor who placed Martin Luther King, the Holy Roman Emperor who placed Martin Luther King under the ban.
Bob.
Charles V.
Charles V is right. And then he marched on Rome and made the Pope his prisoner for 10 points. Born the son of the great Habsburg Emperor Charles V, this man...
Hayes Bob.
Philip II.
Philip II is right. Entered an invasion of England in 1588. For 10 points, the center of Russia's opera, ballet, and theater activity is housed...
East Larry.
The Bolshoi.
Bolshoi Theater is right. Here's a 10-point art question, so we'll ask you to look at the screen. In 1874, a group of French painters...
East Aaron.
Monet.
Yes, that's right, Claude Monet. And now for 10 points. Here are 4 abbreviations or acronyms listed in the United States Government Organization Manual. You tell me in order what each stands for. Here they are: HEW, OEO, SBA, and the 4th and final one, WAC. Health, Education, and Welfare, Office of Economic Opportunity, Small Business Administration, and the Women's Army Corps. Quite a few operas have been based on Shakespearean plays. In this series of 4 questions, this is a series now, you identify the plays for 5 points. Both Verdi and Bloch use this Shakespearean tragedy of Scottish kings.
Hayes Ellen.
Macbeth.
Macbeth is right, and for 5 points. Rossini and Verdi wrote operas.
East Larry.
Othello.
Othello is right, based on a play whose subtitle is The Moor of Venice. For 5 points, one of the few composers who took the libretto word for word from Shakespeare, Benjamin Britten, had a success.
Hayes Bob.
It was,
Question goes to East. Had a success with this puckish comedy fantasy.
Stephanie.
Midsummer's Night Dream.
Midsummer Night's Dream. For 5 points, Gounod used the most famous...
East Aaron.
Hamlet.
No, that's not the answer. The most famous of Shakespeare's romantic pairs for his 18...
Joe.
Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet is right. Here now is a 20-point question. Mozart, in writing his 3 greatest operas, The Marriage of Figaro, Don Giovanni, and Così fan tutte, collaborated with a talented but today almost unknown librettist. Who was the man who wrote...
East Aaron.
Socks.
No, that's not the answer. Who was the man who wrote the words to Mozart's music? Delaware Hayes.
Bob.
Fogelweed.
No, that is Lorenzo da Ponte. No score. I have a 10-point question. At the turn of the 60s, the world of contemporary music was just entering a new phase of expression, which turned out to be the predecessor of the present-day folk rock idiom.
Hayes Bob.
The question goes on for East. The group you are about to hear is a product of that movement and was responsible for much of the sophistication it gained. Listen, and for 10 points, give me the performing name of this group.
Stephanie.
Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Peter, Paul, and Mary is right. I have a 10-point question. Listen to this. Blanche Dubois is a character in which...
Hayes Bob.
A streetcar named Desire.
That is right. In which one of Tennessee Williams' plays? That's it. And now for 15 points. 2 brothers living in Rome in the 2nd century B.C. each...
Hayes Bob.
The Gracchi brothers.
Yes, the Gracchi. Each were killed by angry senators for attempting to reform the government, and for 10 points, an outcast from society. According to Old Testament prophecy, he was the eldest son of Abraham by Hagar. He is also the narrator...
Hayes Bob.
Ishmael.
Ishmael is right. Narrator in Herman Melville's Moby Dick, and for 10 points. He was an Egyptian solar god, later identified with
East
Apollo.
Larry.
Ra.
No, that's not the answer. Later identified with Apollo. He was represented as a falcon or falcon-headed god.
Ham.
Ray.
No, that's not the answer. It's Horus, and I have a 15-pointer. An ancient 2-handled vase or urn of considerable size.
East Larry.
Called an amphora.
Amphora is right. Used chiefly to hold wine and oil, and for 10 points. When he was 25 years old, he became the first man in boxing to regain the World Heavyweight Championship. He did it in the 5th-round knockout of his Swedish opponent, Ingmar...
Hayes Pam.
Joe Louis.
No, Ingmar Johansson, named the boxer East.
Tony.
Max Baer.
No, that's not the answer. It was Floyd Patterson, and I have a 20-point art question. This painter was an illustrator and a commercial.
East Aaron.
That is by Bellows.
No, that's not the answer.
Bob.
Ben Shawn.
That is by Ben Shaw. Did a series of paintings about the Sacco Vanzetti trial and I have a 10-point question. I'm going to name 4 Italian coastal cities. In order, place each in the proper coast, east or west. The cities are Genoa, Naples, Venice, and the 4th one is Pisa.
East, Tony.
They are in order east, west, east, east.
No, that's not the answer. Delaware
Pam.
Hayes.
East, east, west, east.
No, they're west, west, east, west. No score. I have a 15-point question. It is an ancient and vast collection of myths and legends unified by the fact that each story involves some supernatural transformation. The work is called...
Hayes, Bob.
Okay, it's by Ovid.
That is correct. Work is called Metamorphoses. Who's the author? And here's a 10-pointer. A much later author used the singular...
Hayes, Bob.
Franz Kafka.
That is correct. The singular is metamorphoses or metamorphosis. I have a 10-pointer. Ever since it lost a narrow strip of coastline to Chile in an 1879 war, this landlocked South American country has been...
Hayes, Bob.
Paraguay.
No, that's not the answer. Has been trying to get a pathway to the sea. To make things more complicated, Peru claims the same Chilean territory. What is the landlocked country involved?
Tony.
Bolivia.
Bolivia is right. You have 10 points. Here's a 20-pointer. Who is the American economist who wrote The Theory of the Leisure Class?
East, Aaron.
Thorstein Veblen.
Thorstein Veblen is right. You have 20 points, and I have a 10-pointer. The cry was millions for defense, but not 1 cent for...
Hayes, Bob.
Okay, it was said by Pinckney originally, and it was against when the U.S. sent ambassadors over to Paris to Talleyrand, and it was the beginning of the Tripolitan War.
Question goes to East. 3 French agents offered to negotiate a treaty of friendship with the United States if the U.S. envoys would pay a bribe to the French foreign minister Talleyrand. How did this episode become known? What was its name?
Aaron.
The XYZ
XYZ affair. And here's a 20-point music question. This composer actually spent most of his life serving a Parisian church as its organist. That which he did compose, however, is generally considered to be brilliant. Listen to the next selection, and for 20 points, give me the name of the composer.
East, Larry.
César Franck.
César Franck! A symphony in D minor. You have 20 points. We'll be back for a close look at our players and to resume play in the second half right after this. Let's see, take one look at the players. From Delaware Hayes, here's Joe Baker, Pam Livingston, Ellen Bowerly, Bob Feroz. That's the team from Delaware Hayes. And from Columbus East, here's Tony Roseborough, Stephanie Ward, Larry King, Aaron Estes. That's the team from East High School. Let's go back to play. The score, Delaware Hayes High School, 150. East High School, 165. Here's your first question. It's worth 10 points. The play The Little Foxes depicts an
Hayes, Bob.
It's by Hellman.
That's right, Lillian Hellman, unpleasant Southern family. Part of the new industrialism, for 15 points. The title, The Little Foxes, is taken from...
Hayes, Bob.
It's from the Book of Solomon in the Bible, the Song of Solomon.
Song of Solomon is right. You have 15 points. And for 5 points, the term literally means my lady in Italian, but has come...
East, Aaron.
Madonna.
That is correct, Madonna. And for 10 points, what is the name of the New Zealanders who, although once fiercely resistant to white
Hayes,
invasion...
Bob.
Okay, they were known as the Mambas.
No, that's not the answer. Resistant to white invasion are now, like the American Indian, losing their identity as a separate race and culture in New Zealand. What's their name?
Aaron.
Aborigines.
No, they are the Maoris. I have a 20-pointer. An American psychologist and behavioral scientist.
East, Aaron.
John Dewey.
That's not the answer. He has pioneered research into the learning process. In his books Walden 2 and Beyond
Tom.
Freedom...
B.F. Skinner.
B.F. Skinner is right. 20 points. Here now's a 10-pointer. Scientifically, this action is described as the movement of an organism toward
East,
or
Larry.
away.
Okay, a tropism.
Tropism is right for 10 points. Here now is a 20-point art question. St. Mark's Square is a favorite subject.
East, Aaron.
It's by Bellini.
Bellini is right. And you have 20 points, and I have a 10-pointer. An American journalist in early colonial days was acquitted in a libel trial.
East, Aaron.
Zenger.
Zenger is right. And for 15 points. After the French defeat by the Prussians in 1871, the country split into factions. The capital was controlled by a party of working people who abolished the conscription, separated...
Pam.
The Commune?
Yes, the Paris Commune is right. And now for 10 points, we'll ask you to match 4 historic figures with works of fiction in which they appear. First, the works. Be careful of this one. Man for All Seasons, Ides of March, War and Peace. Man for All Seasons, Ides of March, War and Peace, Johnny Tremaine. Those are the 4. The figures are Napoleon, Paul Revere, Cleopatra, and...
Hayes Bob.
Okay, Ides of March is Cleopatra, War and Peace is Napoleon, Johnny Tremaine is Paul Revere, and Man for All Seasons is Moore.
That is correct. Thomas Moore. Final one, and I have a 10-point question. There is a Latin phrase which stands for the collection of laws of a state or district. Its literal translation is a body of law.
East Aaron.
Habeas legis.
No, that's not the answer. What is it, Delaware Hayes?
Bob.
That is,
No, it's Corpus Juris, and I have a 15-point question. In Greek legend, he was the loyal friend of Ulysses and the
East Aaron.
Achates.
and the teacher of Telemachus. His name has come to mean any wise, loyal advisor. Delaware Hayes, what's his name? 15 points.
Bob.
Hector.
No, it is mentor. No score. Here's a 15-pointer. A music question. She was everyone's sweetheart and the girl next door. And although through the 40s and 50s, some argue that
Hey, Pam.
Doris Day?
No. Such argue that such adulation was what finally caused her tragic downfall. Listen, and for 15 points, identify this songstress.
Tony.
Debbie Reynolds.
No, that's not the answer. It's Judy Garland. No score. I have a 10-point question. From which of Shakespeare's plays comes this revelation? I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a
Hayes
time.
Ellen.
Hamlet?
Hamlet is right. Doomed for a certain time to walk the night. And for 10 points, he was a colorful spokesman for the American labor movement. One of...
Hayes Bob.
Debs.
That is correct. One of the leaders of the Pullman strike in 1894. And for 5 points, in a well-known children's song, an English landmark suffers destruction.
Hayes Ellen.
London Bridge.
London Bridge is right for 5 points. And now for 10, identify the old lady of Threadneedle Street.
East Stephanie.
The Bank of
The
England.
Bank of England is yours. I have now a 5-pointer. Another of the landmarks of London is Trafalgar Square. It is dedicated to the memory of what?
East Aaron.
Of Lord Nelson.
Yes, Lord Nelson is right. For 20 points, here's an art question. Here you see a statue which portrays that heroic moment when...
East Aaron.
Rodin.
Rodin is right for 20 points. Here's another 20-pointer, another sculptor I'm going to talk about. You'll not see it. This Russian-born sculptor came to the United States in 1905. She's the best known for her assemblages, often grouped within box-like frames. They are constructed of wood or metal, usually painted black or gold. She uses everyday found objects, strips of molding, and Victorian debris to form her powerful, unified pieces for 20 points. Who is she?
East Aaron.
Eschler.
No, that's not the answer. Delaware Hayes.
Bob.
Archipenko.
No, it is Louise Nevelson, and I have a 10-pointer. Who wrote the short story in which Julie Loisel loses a borrowed necklace, not
East
realizing...
Stephanie.
De Maupassant.
Yes, de Maupassant is right. For 20 points, when Alexander the Great died, his generals began a fierce scramble for...
Hayes Bob.
Okay, Egypt was taken over by the Ptolemies, Macedonia was by Antigonus, and Syria was by Seleucus.
That is correct. I have a 15-pointer. She was the wife of Lipidoth, and with Barak, she led the Israelites in battle to defeat the troops.
Hayes Bob.
Deborah.
Deborah is right for 15 points. And now here's another 15-pointer. In July 24, 1911, a dauntless American archaeologist named Hiram Bingham made an incomparable discovery on the summit of a precipice over a foaming river. In search for the last Inca capital, he found the lost city.
East Larry.
Lost Inca City would be Machu Picchu.
Yes, Machu Picchu is right for 10 points. Astolfo is one of the 12 paladins of Charlemagne. What is a paladin?
Hayes Bob.
Okay, a paladin is something that protects a city from outer harm, or anything that protects it is based upon a statue of Athena that was in the city.
Now, the question goes to East. What is a paladin?
Stephanie.
A soldier.
No, a knight or a champion. Here's a 15-pointer. In this German novel, the hero Harry Haller is agonized by his...
East Stephanie.
That's Steppenwolf by...
That is Steppenwolf is right. And now for 10 points. An arm of the Mediterranean Sea. It lies between Italy, Sicily, Sardinia.
East Lurie.
That would be the Turanian Sea.
Turanian Sea is right, and for 10 points. England's greatest metaphysical poet is responsible.
East Durham.
Done.
John Donne is right for 15 points. The ancient Germanic peoples, especially the Scandinavians and Anglo-Saxons, used an alphabet of their own. It fell
Hayes
out.
Ellen.
Runes.
Yes! Runes or runic. For 10 points, Chinese history is divided into periods corresponding to the ruling dynasty from 1644 to 1912.
East Stephanie.
Manchu.
Manchu is right for 10 points. What is the name of the famous British news service corresponding to the
Hayes
U.S.?
Pam.
Reuters.
Reuters is right. And for 10 points, I'm going to give you the names of 4 countries. They are Austria, Romania, Hungary, and Bulgaria. Austria, Romania.
East Lurie.
The Austria is the only one that's not touching the other ones.
No, that's not the answer. Tell me which countries are not landlocked. Delaware Hayes.
Bob.
Okay. Romania and Hungary.
No, Romania and Bulgaria. No score. I have a 15-pointer. A grandson of a British prime minister, this 20th century English writer wrote voluminously of philosophy.
Larry.
Walpole.
No, that's not the answer. Mathematical science, politics, morals, religion, and education. Awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1950. He was also well known for his active campaign for nuclear disarmament. Who was?
Joe.
Bertrand Russell.
Bertrand Russell is right. Now for 10 points. The French name for a famous mountain peak in Switzerland is Mount Cervin.
Hayes Bob.
Mont Blanc.
No, what is the German name?
Larry.
The Matterhorn.
Matterhorn, right. Here now is a 10-pointer. Its first important member was Clovis. It was
East Larry.
They'd be the Merovingians.
Merovingians, right. And for there's the horn. The game is over. We'll check the score and announce the winner. What a game. The score is correct. The game is official. It is Delaware Hayes High School, 320 points. East High School, 335 points. The winner, East High School. What a game this was. The whole crowd is standing. Well, this year's runner-up is Delaware Hayes High School. Let's take a look at them. Joe Baker, Pam Livingston, Ellen Bowerly, Bob Feroz. A great team. Congratulations. And now, let's look at 1975-1976 champions. Here they are. Tony Roseborough, Stephanie Ward, Larry King, Aaron Estes, your champions this year from East High School. A great season. Summer challenge round in the summer. Next week, next fall, begin all over again. Good night.
You've been watching the champion match of the 1975-76 In the Know tournament with host Hunt Carlisle. In the Know has been brought to you in part by Franklin University, offering a third kind of education where theory and practice meet. And by First Federal Savings. Enjoy life, save first. And by Right Rug, with 4 locations in each end of town to serve you. Next week, In the Know will feature teams from Northland and Thames Valley in the challenge round. Contestants for tonight's show were selected by the participating high schools. Questions were selected and authenticated by the Public Library of Columbus and Franklin County, where several thousand disc recordings and cassettes are available for your enjoyment. In the Know teams are competing for a $3,250 scholarship provided by Franklin University and First Federal Savings. Team members on In the Know receive the Houghton Mifflin American Heritage Dictionary, compliments of Little Professor bookstores. In the Know is a WBNS-TV presentation originating via videotape from the Color Studios of Channel 10.